Like many of you may be, I am what you call a third culture kid. The general definition is people who are raised in a culture other than their parents or the culture of their country of nationality. And although that is true, to me it means so much more, and until recently, it was something that I was ashamed of. For years, I attempted to erase my Chinese heritage from my identity, and soon I could not find a place to fit in. I felt too Chinese to be Canadian and not Chinese enough to be Chinese. For those who don't know me, my name is Lillian, and I am so grateful to be sharing my chapel speech with you all. While most of my friends enjoyed their Saturdays, I would have to sit in a classroom learning Mandarin, counting down the minutes until class was over. I thought that by only half-heartedly learning the language, my parents would take me out of the class. Clearly, it didn't work, seeing as I spent 9 years in Mandarin classes, dreading the next vocabulary test. At my predominantly white middle school, I often worried, what would people think if they knew I spent every Saturday in Chinese class? Would they think that I was weird? Was I too different for them? I especially dreaded history lessons where we discussed our backgrounds. While many of my friends and classmates could trace their family tree generations back from Europe to Canada, I could not. I had never even bothered to ask about my own background. Well, after talking to my grandmother recently, I gained a newfound appreciation for my heritage. My grandma grew up in a small village in Tianjin, China, as the eldest of 6 children. Oftentimes there was no meat at meals, at least until the Lunar New Year, when each family would receive one small chicken. Food was bought using food coupons that were allotted to each household, and everyone would receive the same number of coupons, regardless of the number of people under each household. Even after having 2 children of her own, life wasn't easy for my grandma. She learned how to crochet, sew, and knit, often making clothes for my mom and her brother. Both she and my grandfather worked long hours at various jobs to put food on the table and ensure that their kids had a good childhood. Although these were hardships she was describing, it was clear that she had an immense amount of love for her family and her culture. It is an unconditional, pure sort of love, and it is one that I am so lucky to have experienced firsthand, as my grandma is like a second mother to me. Unconditional love. Love without bounds. It's such a magical, beautiful thing, and it was so easy for my grandma to love me unconditionally, yet it was so hard for me to show that same love to myself. For a period of time in my life, there were parts of myself that I just could not accept. This trickled into my daily life. On a typical day, a small voice in my head would dictate the decisions I made with one singular goal: to fit in. In the dead of winter, I would stubbornly wear knee socks instead of tights to school, telling my concerned grandma, "In Canada, people don't get cold." I stopped taking home-cooked meals with me, instead settling for overpriced sandwiches sold in the school cafeteria. Whenever teachers attempted to get me to share about my culture, I would feign confusion, even if it was a simple question like, "What is your Chinese name?" One day in class, we were tallying up our physical characteristics like eye color and hair color, and I promptly got into an argument with the substitute teacher, insisting that my hair was brown and not black, because scientifically nobody's hair is pure black. Yes, I was that kind of student. The poor substitute probably thought I was a little bit of a nightmare. When I entered high school, these worries seemed to double. Returning home from school, I would spend my time in front of the mirror scrutinizing every aspect of my appearance. Comments I got at school from others only made things worse. I began to internalize hurtful words that were said to me about my body. If so-and-so had called me chubby, then I must be, therefore I should exercise more and eat less. Unhealthy thoughts ran rampant in my brain, keeping me up during long, sleepless nights. I would often play Frank Ocean songs during those nights, because the dreaded silence would mean that I would have to address the way I thought of myself. Although I still struggle with my body image sometimes, I now have a much better relationship with food and exercise, which took a lot of time and patience. I am sure I'm not the only person who has had thoughts like these. Maybe it is just a part of growing up, yet it seems to be exacerbated by factors out of our control, like Eurocentric beauty standards, social media, the society we live in, and the people around us. Some things, like beauty standards, are difficult to rewrite, but it is beginning to happen. There are also other smaller things we can do to create a feeling of belonging. So why don't we actively try to make the space we exist in a welcoming and accepting place? Well, I believe in the statement, practice what you preach. Without self-acceptance, how can you help others feel like they belong? I know that personally, after coming to Appleby last year, I met so many amazing people in an environment that was so much more supportive, and I noticed that the little voice in my head wasn't so loud anymore. I am so thankful for the friends I have made and people like my advisor and guidance counselors who have offered their unending support and love. With their help, I have come to realize that you shouldn't change yourself to suit the needs of others. I have become prouder of my heritage and the valuable stories that accompany it, many of which I know I will continue to share in the future. While doing some more self-reflection on my childhood, I realized that little voice that was always picking out the parts of me I tried to erase hadn't always been in my head. I remember being in grade 2 and picking out a pair of glasses. I was dead set on buying these neon orange square frames, which were honestly probably the brightest pair of glasses on display. No matter how hard she tried, my mom couldn't convince me otherwise. I didn't care that they probably wouldn't match with most clothing or what other people would think, because I loved those glasses and my opinion was the only one that mattered. My mother finally caved in, and I was ecstatic to rock the killer combination that was orange glasses with shirts that had just about every bright color you could ever think of on them. Now, I want to ask all of you to picture you as a little kid again. Whether you're a student or a faculty member who's been here for over 20 years, think about who you were between the ages of 5 and 9. Imagine your younger self giving you a big hug. That little kid is proud of you and the person you have become. Perhaps right now you still have doubts about who you are and particular facets of your identity. I know I still do. Little kid you doesn't care because they love you unconditionally. When we are young, we often prioritize ourselves and rarely ever worry about how we are perceived. It's part of the beauty of childhood. I want you to keep little you in mind as you go about the rest of your day today. Growth and change don't happen overnight, so take it day by day and focus on the present. Know that there are always people who accept and support you and will always love you, even when it seems impossible for you to love yourself. Do not be afraid to reach out to those people when you need to. Likewise, you are that person for others as well. Also remember to practice self-care and take time for yourself when needed. Everyone has struggled with parts of their identity, yet they shouldn't be pushed down and hidden. From your ethnicity to your sexual identity to your personality, every aspect of your identity is a piece of the unique puzzle that is you as a person, and a puzzle isn't complete if it's missing pieces. It's okay if you lose sight of those pieces once in a while, but have faith that you will find them again, sometimes in the most ordinary of places. Thank you. Now we will close with the hymn, She Comes Sailing on the Wind.